Welcome back everyone to the second Junkworld Devlog. If you haven't seen the first, make sure to give it a watch after this one. There should be a card somewhere here or there. Now, in that previous devlog, I said that if we would hit 10 subs before this one came out, I would buy everyone nuggets. And since we're well over 50 when I'm recording this, I guess I owe everyone a nugget. So in the description you'll find the link to where you can download your personal nugget. In today's devlog, I want to go over the current state of Junkworld right now and all the base elements that make up the game so far. And keep in mind, this is a starting point for everything, so I already have a lot of ideas of things I want to change and add. So for every feature we discuss today, I will also list the changes, improvements and ideas that I have. And now, without further ado, let's jump into Unity. Did I mention doing this is part of me learning how to program? And didn't I say I love tutorials? Well, wham bam, right from the start I followed this amazing tutorial by iHeartGameDev, link in the description, to set up the base for my character controller. In my previous platformer Voidwalker, I coded my own character controller from scratch using Unity's rigid body system, but this time I opted for using the Unity built-in character controller. And I must say, having worked with both, I am liking the character controller a little bit more. I'm not saying one is better than the other, it's just a personal preference. And of course, the controller I have right now is very basic, especially for an action platformer, so I'll definitely want to add some of that sweet platforming moves, like double jumping, wall sliding and wall jumping, dashing and rolling, and definitely a more sophisticated combat system. I really dislike the way this animation is looking, and I would love there to be this 3/ combo system. As far as our main character goes, her temporary name is Carly, and though I really like her simple low poly style and design, she will need to change eventually. Making and designing characters is not my cup of tea, and so when I designed her and made her and rigged her in Blender, I made some crucial mistakes, and when I tried to add some new animations, well, let's say things got messed up a little. For now she'll work fine, but since I'm making an action platformer, movement has to feel and look great. So she'll do for now, but I will definitely be changing, expanding and polishing her. But of course the character controller isn't the only thing I did, so let's take a look at some of the other features that I already implemented. You are, of course, going to be able to interact with things in the world. And to enable the player to interact with objects, I wrote this simple switch component. You can attach it to any object with a collider on it, and as soon as the player enters that collider, the player can interact with that object. The component itself does not have any functionality other than fire an event when the player interacts with that object by either turning it on or off. This allows me to, in the Unity Inspector, attach listeners to those events and do all sorts of cool things. For instance, I made these moving platforms. Again, a fairly simple component which moves an object, like a platform, elevator, cart, or basically whatever, from point to point. I can then totally hook my moving platform component into my switch and bam! I can activate the platform with the switch. And while I was doing that, I also right away implemented area triggers, which basically automatically trigger the switch when the player enters the collider. And talking about platforms, I not only have moving platforms, I also have braking platforms. I am a huge sucker for braking platforms, so I copied those over from Voidwalker where they were a pretty big thing. I copied them basically straight over, but I added the fact that they can respawn after a few seconds. Now, these obviously need a lot of work because it's really unclear when a platform is going to break or reappear. Sadly, platforms and switches alone don't make a game. And I also love telling a good story, so I definitely want to add a dialogue system. Now, I've worked with many different dialogue systems before, but most of them are either too simple or very expensive. So during my previous tests, I opted to use Ink. Ink is, as the creators put it, a narrative scripting language for games, and it actually integrates very well with Unity, and I've been having real fun diving into how it works. as you follow along with this devlog, I'm sure you'll find a theme of me liking to do new things, so I figured, hey, while I'm learning how to script in Unity, why not learn a second scripting language at the same time? And by the way, talking about following this devlog, if you would like to follow along, why not hit that subscribe button and perhaps even that bell button so you get notified when I put up a new devlog. Dialogue, as much as the rest, is integrated really rudimentary for now, but I already experimented with it a little more and ink really shows a lot of potential. Oh, and by the way, this dialogue is also triggered using my Switch. What? Next, I really wanted to experiment with some enemies, and using Unity's Nav Mesh agents, I managed to make some tiny robots which run away from you, and a large, very dangerous looking cube, which chases after you and tries to do something. Both you and the enemies have a health component, which, you guessed it, manages your health. It works similar to the Switch system in that if you hit 0 health, the component fires an event with which you can do anything. In this case, the enemies blow up. Enemies were just something that I threw in because I really wanted to see how hard it would be to make some sort of moving enemy AI thing, which using Unity's Nav Mesh agents was surprisingly easy. But since I didn't have a clear idea of how the enemies would work, what they would look like, or how they would act, I started focusing on other things. I am also not a huge fan of the design of these spider bots, so let me know in the comments what you would do to make them better. Those were already a lot of features, but I've been saving the best for last, although I guess the character controller should be the best, but it's not the last, but whatever. I am, of course, talking about the repair system, and something to keep in mind is that the way I implemented it right now is not the way it will be in the final game, and it's actually not something I particularly like, but it's a great starting point. And I guess it works. So, let me run you through it. Just as you can make an object interactable by adding a switch to it, you can also make it breakable, which means if the object is broken, it has to be repaired before you can do anything with it. To repair something, you will need to gather parts, which now are conveniently placed here, but eventually you will have to look for them, trade them with NPCs, or defeat enemies to get them. If you pick up parts, they go into your inventory, and here you can see each part has a few stats. And if we take a look at the object we need to repair, we can see it needs a part with these particular stats. If we then look through our inventory, we can see that we don't have any parts with these stats, but luckily we can combine parts to try and make one. And if we do, we now can, voila, repair the object and use it. Pretty neat, right? But also pretty unclear and not really what I had in mind. What I do really like about this system is that fixing something doesn't require a specific part, but you can always make the part. This way, it fits perfectly within the junk and mashing together theme, and it prevents me from having to tell players where they can find specific parts, and it becomes much more of an adventure instead of one giant fetch quest. And it will go without saying that the repairing mechanic will need a shit ton of work to get right, and also a lot of designing. One of the ideas that I'm playing with right now is to make it more of a card-based system where you can collect like cards which represent parts and spend them on a repair instead of crafting parts from items. Obviously, there's still a shit ton of work which needs to be done. So, I better get cracking. And if you made it this far into the video, hit that like button. And if you haven't hit that subscribe button, it's right next to it, so you can click that as well. And since we overshot the subs in the previous devlog like crazy, let's say if we hit 200 subscribers before the next devlog comes out, I'll do a live stream and I'll make something for the game. So make sure to leave a comment what you would like to see me implement. And as for today, thanks for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one.